If you were to watch any of the live footage that has been taken from Nine Inch Nails' recent shows from the Peel It Back tour, you always notice the high production quality of the show, its undeniable large elaborate stage setup, the meticulous planning, how it's highly organized, and an overall sophisticated quality to it. When you see footage scattered across the internet from their shows from back in the day, however, it's a completely different story.
Live, I think anger becomes a main source of energy to draw from. The shows become really visceral.
The Downward Spiral tour was like none other. I can't imagine anything before or after that to compete with the chaos and the danger of that show. It was crazy. Maybe G.G. Allen, but it wasn't like people trying to, defecate on themselves and kill themselves.
So obviously Nine Inch Nails live shows have evolved into something almost completely different from what they were in the early days of Trent Reznor's professional career. Today, I want to talk about some of the bizarre stories and live footage from Nine Inch Nails' early concerts, particularly the first Lollapalooza tour of 1991, and the touring that happened from 94 to 96 in support of the Downward Spiral album, what might be one of the greatest rock tours of all time. So without further ado, let's go down memory lane and explore the madness that was Nine Inch Nails' early live shows.
I'm telling you, if we had the Nine Inch Nails here tonight, you folks would be scared silly. And afterwards, you would come up one by one and thank me for it. So try and do that. Can you do that?
I'll make a
call some of your
right after the
big
show.
shot phony music buddies and get Nine Inch Nails in.
I got it.
I'm telling you, that was like kaboom. Very exciting, Nine Inch Nails.
As I was researching my last video on A Perfect Circle and the release of Murder the Gnome, I came across a few interesting stories that I thought would be good for a separate video, and so I want to share them with you today. In an interview, Billy Howerdel talked about his time as a guitar tech, particularly about working with Nine Inch Nails, before he was ever a co-founding member of A Perfect Circle. Billy was a guitar tech for Nine Inch Nails in 1994 during their Self-Destruct tour, joining just before their famous Woodstock 94 performance. You can actually briefly see Billy Howerdel in the Closure film, holding up one of Trent's broken guitars. Turns out that the first time that Billy Howerdel ever played guitar in front of a large audience was not with The Perfect Circle, and in fact, it was under bizarre and stressful circumstances.
The screen comes down for a middle part of the show, so I think everyone lets even more loose on stage at that point, and they did, and it was the stage was destroyed. Trent's laying on the ground. I think he's bleeding. He definitely got the wind knocked out of him or something. He was just laying there, not moving. On the side of the stage, we had a digital clock with a countdown as to how much time before the next song started. And like I said, this one had a little mini movie in the middle of the set that you had like a 2 or 3 minute break for. And so we got down to the last few seconds, and I'm sitting there with the guitar ready to go to hand it to him, and he's still laying on the ground. And I was like, I probably should have been calling the doctors over, but I said, like, come on, let's go. It's show's starting, I'm like 30 seconds, 20 seconds, we're down to 8 seconds. Do you want me to play this or what? And he just says, yes. And, barely able to breathe. And I had known how to play all the parts because I did Trent sound checks for a lot of the sound checks. I had done it to play along with the band. If he was out doing press, I'd just like to take the pressure off. And the production manager asked me to learn everything too, because prior to that, Robin Fink had broken or sprained his finger. So we almost had to cancel shows, and I think Geordie from Marilyn Manson wanted playing guitar, augmenting what he couldn't play, and so they were like, "Look, just for protection, let's just make sure you techs know how to play their parts." So I was ready to go, and then all of a sudden, so cut back to 8 seconds to go. Come on, let's go. You want me to play this or what? And Trent says yes, and I just, oh my god! So I step into the literally into the overhead spotlight and start playing Eraser. And, and it was as trippy for me as it was for anyone on that stage, whether it was Danny, Charlie, Podboy, or Robin, the other band members, or the crew looking at me like, what the hell's going on? It was surreal. And that's the first time I ever played in front of anyone, really. I mean, I had a high school cover band. If you know what you're doing, then you're I knew those songs pretty well. So it was fun, but I was just worried that the production manager would come tackle me and think I had gone crazy to get me off the stage, thinking like I had knocked Trent out, or I had all these kind of thoughts going on in my head, like I don't know what's going on.
Did you stay on the set after that song?
Yeah, so like after that, well, the weird thing is like I'm doing, if anyone knows the song, there's a guitar, the drums start, and the guitar and drums are together, and then the vocal comes in, and so it's literally, so to set the stage, I mean, if I'm on stage, there's opera gauze, or it's called shark's tooth scrim or opera gauze. It goes in front of you. The projector from the front projects on that, but you can't see anything behind it. You're completely in the dark until you're lit. So the cue is, as soon as I start playing, there's a spotlight that comes over my head. So I'm aside from the drummer, I'm the only one lit on stage, right? And that's Trent's position. So right when I'm done with the guitar part, I kind of, scoot out of the way, and he comes in to sing, and he grabs me by the shirt and pulls me back into there as he's singing, and he just like gives me the look like, hang out. And then as we're singing the big chanting, kill me, hate me, like he's going sing, here. So I just sang on the mic with him as I'm playing, and it was awesome, And I thought it was really gracious and cool of him to pull me in. And then and so after that night, he said, "Yeah, it was really fun. Let's do it again. So we just kept doing it for a few more nights. I think it was like a good week or 2 weeks of shows we did it for. It was fun, but it was also a little of that, there's a little bit of that undercurrent when you on the crew, like, okay, so now you think you're hot shit, so you have to kind of temper all that and go like, yeah, that's cool. You can't celebrate it too much. Who am I going to celebrate that with? I'm celebrating it more now, 26 years later than I did then, or 28 years. Oh my God, that was 28 years ago.
This one crazy story made me wonder about a few things related to Nine Inch Nails shows in the past. Why were Nine Inch Nails shows so chaotic? And what are some other bizarre stories that have been shared and even caught on film during those early tours? From watching the chaos unfold during a Nine Inch Nails show, it left me wondering just how deliberate a lot of the wild things going on stage actually were. Well, as it turns out, a lot of the violence on stage, though intentional and some of it planned out, was not choreographed. How the chaos unfolded during a show was determined by the energy at the time, with some level of spontaneity. Ever since Nine Inch Nails would start touring in 1989, with the music already being aggressive in nature and Trent and the band wanting to portray an image that was aggressive, dark, anarchic, and really punk, and Trent also going deeper down a rabbit hole of substance abuse, the live shows always had a messy and violent character to it. Trent would comment to Guitar World Writers in a book published in 2025 detailing the first Lollapalooza tour in 1991, sharing, "I'm not going to be pretentious enough to say that I never realized that if I break things it gets reactions. It is entertainment, right? That's the bottom line. The show developed as we got more angry at the audience, and they liked it. And then it got more abusive and dangerous, and they seemed to like us more." In that same book, there are details about Nine Inch Nails' stint with the Lollapalooza tour and how $40,000 of gear was destroyed. The first Lollapalooza tour in 1991 was crucial in helping launch the career of Nine Inch Nails. As the festival tour dragged on from July through August of that year, it became apparent that Nine Inch Nails was the breakthrough band of that festival, generating the most buzz. Some observed that Nine Inch Nails merchandise outsold all the other artists of the Lollapalooza tour, including the official Lollapalooza t-shirts. Richard Patrick, who famously quit Nine Inch Nails and formed the band Filter because of the dissatisfying compensation, combined with the observation of all the costly gear getting destroyed, was often getting physically pushed around and stuff thrown at by Trent on stage. He would share, "My knees are still fucked up from that tour. I actually had to have back surgery because I walked with a limp for like 10 years, because my whole right leg was just wailed on. Chiropractors and doctors were like, 'How long did you play college football?' I'd go, 'It wasn't college football. It was Trent Reznor.'" Tour manager Mark O'Shea even tells of a time when Richard Patrick stage dived into the crowd during the Lollapalooza tour. Mark himself went into the audience to try and grab Richard. By the time he got him back on stage, Richard had nothing on him but his combat boots and his tighty whities.
So we had kind of the tracks, as they're now called, tracks, and then we had guitar. I played guitar, Trent played some guitar, Trent sang, and I sang backups. And then there was a live keyboard player, and then there was Chris Front actually played drums. It was the four of us, and we just kind of added on top of the tracks and just went for it. And a lot of the show wasn't just about music, it was about releasing this aggression that we had as kids. And I think, Trent and I started throwing beer at each other, and one thing led to another, and it was just like the more we abused each other on stage, the more the crowd kind of got off on it. And so we ran with it, and the music was very important, but the performance and just the aggression in which we added to the live show, just as much chaos as possible, just added to this live show, and that was the whole kind of Nine Inch Nails experience. I mean, at a certain point, Trent started tackling me in the same spot in Sin every night, and I could expect that, but it was done there was a genuine kind of, I'm glad the audience likes seeing us kill each other, because we love killing each other as well. It was definitely there was something absolutely real about the violence. It wasn't, and I, to this day, my knee has never been the same. I mean, I hurt my knee bad. He hurt my knee bad one time, and and I was just bruised from head to toe with the violence that happened in Nine Inch Nails. But it was never choreographed. Obviously Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, they were all smashing their instruments, and we didn't. It's not like we called each other. It's like we all just started destroying our equipment. Like, Nine Inch Nails, we were doing it, and then you'd see Nirvana doing it, and you would just see this element of punk rock. But the reason why I think we were so angry is because for years, MTV and commercial radio only played the hair bands. The rock, the heavy metal hair bands. But the alternative scene was just being neglected entirely by the United States, the audience, in the United States, and we were just pissed off. We hated the fact that, no one understood our music and no one understood us, and that kind of, for lack of a better word, teen angst, was just felt by the audience in general. I think Generation X was being they were coming of age, and I think that they needed to let it out, needed to release that kind of energy.
Decided to make it a ridiculous live kind of thing with people sweating, kind of convey the energy that the record tried to convey and the honesty that the record tried to convey in a live setting. And just to make it interesting, we try to be as ridiculous as possible. Sometimes Rich gets hurt. In fact, Rich has some unique scarification that we've been working on this tour. This was from a couple days ago. Today he's got some nice ones on part of his body we can't show on TV. But desperate for entertainment back here.
Marky Ray, who was a guitar tech for Nine Inch Nails at the time, would talk about how tour manager Mark O'Shea would give him $2,000 to go out and buy some cheap guitars to smash on stage every time they would arrive at a new town during the Lollapalooza tour. In the days before the internet, Marky would use a hotel landline, go through the yellow pages and call up local music stores and pawn shops, asking if they had certain cheap guitars, Kramer's, Schecter, Jackson's, Charvel's, as long as the pickups sounded good. Marky would go to the airport to rent a car, then drive into town to wherever sold cheap instruments, ask how much for all the cheap guitars, pay the $2,000, take all the guitars without cases or strings sometimes, put them in the vehicle's trunk, and drive back to the venue and set them up. Trent and Patrick, and often other very well-known musicians from the Lollapalooza tour, would usually smash guitars during the song Head Like a Hole. When the show was over, Marky would gather all the broken parts scattered on stage and into a trash bin that was thrown into the back of a semi. He then detailed how he would try to fix some of those broken guitars to then be used again, as he himself described. That consisted of, you take a broken neck and you throw as much wood glue as you can in there, and then you C-clamp it, and then you run drywall screws countersunk on either side of the truss rod. And then you break off the ends on the back of the neck and sand them down. And then you sit them overnight, and you can restring them just enough that they'll hold for maybe a song. Maybe. And those would be some of the guitars I would hand to Trent to smash. Marky Ray also shared in the Lollapalooza book that Nine Inch Nails toured with Die Warsaw and Meat Beat Manifesto in the summer of 1990, who both often abused their gear. That is when Trent started breaking a lot of guitars.
As I went on to work for the band, I was their first technician, their first production manager, and their sole technician for 1990 through 91 mostly. I mean, we had other people at one point, but I was the only guitar tech throughout all of Lollapalooza in Europe, except for the last few years. Trent finally hired his own guitar tech after we played Wembley, and I was actually happy because we'd been through a lot at that point, because it's very hard to, as a guitar technician, it's very hard to work for a number of people, especially when they're smashing gear like shit through a goose. But so what happened was, right after the Head Like a Hole video, we went right out on the road, and it was absolutely the most ball-buster tour, and it was insane. We played this club in LA called Helter Skelter, which was also known as the Club with No Name, and we pulled up there, and all of a sudden the Black Flag van pulls up with the 4 bars on the back, and it's a big box truck. So they ran the sound and for that show, and it was like, this place was like an emptied out grocery store with a stage, you know, and I mean, there was like a foot off the ground. So the crowd at the end of the show, I was up against the drum riser with people stacked up in front of me like cordwood, reaching for the band. I'm standing on Trent's microphone stand. I'm a huge guy, standing on it, was shrunk down so he can sing and finish the set. And I'm his sole barricade, you know, up against the drum riser. And people are stacked up to my chest, like pawing at them. It was absolute bedlam. I mean, I was threatening people with an inch of their life to get the fuck off my stage. And the whole tour was like that. And, you know, for those of us who lived through the 80s hair metal, you know, it was like the coming out of the tribes. There was all these, what I call the black-clad masses, you know, the tattooed, pierced, branded, scarification, brightly colored or darkly colored clothes. And you're like, where the hell have you people been? And where did you come from? And that's what it became, this overground movement of like alternative music.
A notable instance that happened at Lollapalooza in 1991 was Nine Inch Nails' first performance in Arizona, where the band was only able to play part of 2 songs because of a faulty power box. When that happened, Trent lost it and destroyed the entire stage. Afterwards, when explaining what happened, Trent made some remarks to the media that many of the working crew members of the Lollapalooza tour took to heart and made them upset. Though it seems like things eventually blew over.
the fuck?
Okay, what just happened?
Well, we were officially the first casualty of the Lollapalooza tour here in Phoenix, Arizona. And I guess what happened is a lot of our equipment in the back was sitting in the sun for quite a long time, baking in the desert heat. And since we are an electronic-based kind of band, when the main part of your sound becomes ruined and melted, which I think is what happened, it was cutting out and just becoming a nightmare. And that complemented with incompetence on the crew part led to a disastrous, embarrassing situation. So, I mean, we want to really apologize to our fans in Phoenix that came out to see us because we really want to do a good show. And it was a nightmare.
Did you actually stop right in the middle of a song? Or?
Oh, we had to. So, yeah, the second song, same thing happened, so it was time to cut our losses and maybe entertain people by smashing our expensive equipment instead of committing social suicide on the stage. See, the way equipment works with us is if it messes up on you, it has to pay the price. So it had to pay for what it had done. It caused an embarrassment to us. Ultimately, we pay. It doesn't really make sense, but it seems like the right thing to do at the time.
Nine Inch Nails, we still had the crew. As the crew, we had their back. You know, everybody thinks there was, this bad blood, and we stopped caring. No, that's bullshit. I mean, we had their back. I mean, one thing that did happen is, Rollins is Rollins, and he's opinionated, and he's a good guy, he's incredibly intelligent. And I remember having a conversation, not an argument with him at the back of the bus. He was pissed off about what Trent had said. He was pissed off that about the crew statement, and also about the fact that Trent was smashing guitars. It really upset him because Henry's like, what kid wouldn't give you his right nut to have a fucking $1,500 Gibson guitar? And I was like, well, Henry, that's Trent's prerogative. That's what he wants to do. He likes to smash guitars. He doesn't. It's not. I mean, it's part of the show. I agree with you. I am a guitar collector myself, but that's what he does. So I had to stick up for Trent, and I always did.
So now with the ever-rising popularity of Nine Inch Nails and a notoriety for destructive shows, fans were looking forward to what would come next. Little did they know that what was ahead was going to be even more darker and violent. Hey guys, just a quick reminder. If you're liking this video so far, give it a like and or leave a comment, or subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. This channel is still in its early stages and just recently went past 1,000 subscribers. My last video on A Perfect Circle was the first one ever to reach 100,000 views, so I've been feeling really grateful these past few months. Also, I want to let you guys know that I did start a Patreon page for anyone that wants to support me further. If you are someone that likes long-form video essays, especially on rock history, then please consider supporting me on there. On Patreon, you'll get earlier access to all my future uploads, uncensored, where I can avoid the overreactive copyright claims on music that happen all too often on YouTube. These videos take a lot of time and effort. That includes doing all the research, writing the script, then rewrite the script, film and record the main portion of the video, source all relevant clips and still images, and then do all the video editing myself. And making the thumbnail and uploading the video can be time consuming as well. If you want me to do more frequent uploads, then this is a good way for anyone to contribute so that I may spend more time working on these videos and less time on my day job. I know these are tough times, so I've been hesitant to ask for this kind of support. But $1 or $2 a month, maybe $5, can be of great help in getting more of this type of content out there, which I hope is both informative and entertaining. And I will give you guys a shout out as my Patreon supporters at the end credits of my future videos. I will leave a link to the Patreon page in the description down below. Or consider becoming a YouTube member on here where you would get similar benefits. If that is too much to ask of you right now, I completely understand. Then just give this video a like and or leave a comment or subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And click on that bell icon so you will be notified as soon as I upload a new video. Alright, so on to the rest of this video. During Nine Inch Nails' concerts from 1994 to 1996, in support of the Downward Spiral album, the destruction continued and seemed to be more prevalent, but at the same time had more thought put into it. These touring cycles included other well-known bands, like Marilyn Manson, Skinny Puppy, the Jim Rose Circus, Melvins, and David Bowie. The Jim Rose Circus is a modern-day version of a circus sideshow, featuring cannot look away shock entertainment that includes sword swallowing, body piercing, fire eating, and extreme pain stunts performed by the cast members. Now with the intent to recreate the Downward Spiral's themes of nihilism, self-loathing, and self-destruction, on top of already having the expectation for violence on stage, the chaos rose to another level. It looks like Trent Reznor might have also started to care less about how expensive the equipment that he was destroying. It seems like a typical show during this era. The high energy would culminate into a violent catharsis about midway into the set, with a few instruments being destroyed, usually at the end of Happiness and Slavery. The violence often continued throughout the show, with Trent literally throwing things around stage and at his bandmates. Mic stands, keyboards, guitars, whatever. There is a segment in the closure film focusing on a time that Trent threw a mic stand and ended up gashing drummer Chris Vrenner's forehead. Despite now having a large bloody cut, Chris apparently toughed it out and continued the rest of the show. At times, Trent would shove and even body slam his bandmates, like you see him doing here to Danny Lohner.
That's funny because I was just on Facebook the other day, and somebody posted on this Wax Tracks record label thing. They're saying how, oh, I saw Nine Inch Nails once in 1993, and their guitars and keyboards are fake. It's all fake, blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking, they didn't even tour or do any shows in 1993, and those are all real guitars and keyboards. Trust me. I know because I still have some of the broken ones, and I know for, none of those keyboards were all DX7s. They were vintage fucking keyboards, and they cost a fortune now. And on the Downward Spiral tour, which I was out with Nine Inch Nails, but I was with the Jim Rose Circus, we were opening on that tour. But Trent employed an old friend of mine from this Cincinnati band called the Erector Set. His name was Barry Haney, and all Barry's job on that entire tour was to fix DX7s and put them out on stage. He had to have 5 working DX7s over the course of the show, and they had them on stage, and they used them as triggers, but they also used the sounds that were in the keyboard as well.
One thing that I couldn't help but notice when watching a lot of this footage, because it almost always makes me laugh just a little bit, is how often a road crew member has to come on stage to set up a mic stand or synthesizer or keyboard stand after Trent or the other band members decide to throw it. Or how often they have to retrieve one of the band members themselves whenever they're pushed into the audience. It does also make me feel a little sorry for the roadies that have to pick up after the band all the time. Though overall, I still think they would make for great stories to tell if you were them. The shows would become so chaotic that at times it seemed like things could go full-scale riot.
And live, that energy, that chaos, I thrive on it. When things are about to spin out of control, which, especially on the Downward Spiral tour, there was a lot of that. I mean, that element, we really coordinate with security to where it wasn't, it seemed like it was on the verge of a riot, where it seemed, and we actually wasn't an accident. We thought and everything was planned out, but you weren't. To the concert goer, it seemed like things might spill out of control. Absolutely. And on stage, there'd be people flying on stage. It seemed like my teeth might get knocked out if that guy hits me in the back of the head with, and a lot of that was his luck. But overall, there's just this very contradictory, this studio energy that I was surprised initially to find the music thrived in that. Some of this anger from the studio put in this live situation now where people are screaming back at you the same lyrics that I wrote in my bedroom. Created this just cathartic energy release that, you know, if people were getting bumped around or stage diving, or it just was an interesting format to take these carefully messed with things into this new arena, and it seemed to work, you know, and it was fun, you know, it was fun. You'd leave the stage exhausted spiritually, physically, you know, in every way. I realized there was strength in chaos, and there's a power in that, and I don't know if that's just another part of my personality that needs released after being caged up.
Some of the behind-the-scenes footage from Nine Inch Nails' famous Woodstock '94 performance shows that the band coming on stage covered in mud was something that was planned. And even the mud fight that supposedly started spontaneously before the band started playing was actually staged.
So what time do we want? 8:30. 8:30. So what time should we leave to go down there and get in the mud? Give us 5 minutes for mud.
5 minutes for mud. I think we should leave here no later than 20 after. We're gonna do the photo immediately after.
Yeah. So we leave at 20. How long does it take us to walk down?
We're gonna hit the ride.
How long does it take us to ride down?
We can do mud right next to the stage.
Oh yeah. It's gonna be us and Metallica. Okay. All I ask is that we beat the fuck out of these guys. These guys represent old metal. These guys represent fucking
Old school.
you know, fucking every ugly bastard fucking hated in school. Fuck the
They were having a private meeting here.
We're having trouble finding private mud. What about getting a bucket, bringing it in here?
Nah.
One other way. That's a good mud one right there, right?
It's more puddles though.
Want me to get some media?
We could stage something.
It's a fight.
Maybe I stay with you in the mud. And you hold me, and I fall. And then we throw it at you guys, and you dive in, just a full-on mud battle, and throw it at everyone around us. Okay.
Okay.
But the point is, when we leave, we are totally covered when we get on the stage. Okay. That's take a look at that mud line and see how it is.
I think what's
It's funny to watch the band hold back laughter in an interview right after the Woodstock performance when talking about how they supposedly started a mud fight.
Ben, how did you get mud all over you?
On the way to the stage, there was a little accident,
It was an accident.
and it turned into a kind of a mud wrestling thing that escalated into a full-scale mud riot. So we froze, and then we stood up there for half an hour while they figured out what was wrong with the PA system.
So what happened? Somebody fell over, or somebody pushed somebody, and then somebody else came in?
I accidentally tripped Danny and pushed his face into the mud, and then he retaliated by body slamming me.
And then David Crosby got in there with us with some mayonnaise and some tape, and it was insane. Yeah, it was absolutely arousing.
Were you through the guitar? Were you just cross with it?
See, I have a policy where if something doesn't work, it needs to pay the price for that. So if it's out of tune, it has to pay.
Well, the mic went as well. Is that how you got that scratch on your head?
This scratch right here?
Yeah.
I think I hit myself with my mic. Yeah. It happens sometimes.
And I saw you were throwing Evian bottles out there. You were cross or angry?
Cross. Call me cross.
So now, when did you when did?
So now I'm in the comfort of my own home, and I've got the pay-per-view dialed right up there, and it's 9 Inch Nails. I want to tell you something. I was frightened in my own home.
So you liked them?
I did. These, but I tell you, they're very entertaining. They're very frightening, but these boys need some counseling.
9 Inch Nails.
The boys were destructive, and they were cursing.
9 Inch Nails?
That's right.
Cursing on stage? Yeah. Get him on the show.
See, on the one stage, you had Nine Inch Nails, and they were covered with mud. They just kind of crawled out on stage covered with mud. And then on another stage, you had Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and David Crosby is in a sport jacket. Well, here it is. You have the polar opposites there of the Woodstock experience. Here we go. And at one point, the one Nine Inch Nail, Trent, he's very disturbed. This kid is emotionally disturbed.
Yeah.
He's so disturbed and he's so excited and he's whirling around with the microphone cord and he trips up the guitar player and they both fall down.
Really?
By the way, somebody tell me another caught on film concert that has more copies than this one posted onto YouTube, because there are quite a few of Nine Inch Nails' Woodstock '94 show.
Trent has this move he does where people get wrapped up in microphone cords and yanked off of their feet. We like to call that rodeo roundup. And if that doesn't happen, I kind of sit there wondering, why is no one lying on their back, tangled up in cables, getting dragged across the stage? Because that usually is indicative that he's having a good show and that we know there's nothing wrong.
I got 3 stitches here. Taking off my guitar, it's too fast.
I heard like 6 songs into the set. Robin's head's bleeding. Did I do it? No, he did it himself. Okay.
You can't really see it anymore. It's been a couple of months, but I got 3 stitches here, a bunch of scratches here.
All my scars are on the inside.
My legs look amazing, but that's another story. I just run into things. You don't really feel them until after you get off stage.
That tour, I went through 137 Les Pauls when I did the final count. And so this was the number one of all of them. So at the end of the tour, Trent just said, take 2 or 3 guitars with you, whatever you want. And so, of course, I grabbed this. And the first guitar that I got in my hands to work on of Trent's, and laid it down. And I think one of the instructions that came down the pipe that day was, he wanted to trade out a pickup. So I was soldering, and I laid the soldering iron down, and it just slipped, and I did that. Oof. And it went hit the finish. I was like, oh my God. I mean, I thought like I'm fired. Right. Yeah. And then the tech next to me was working on stuff, and it's almost like going into war, and he just goes, dude, that's the least of your concerns. That is not a big deal as of what's going to happen tonight. And you can see over the years what had happened.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that was. It couldn't have been a symbol, but it had to be something like a piece of scaffolding that it cut through. This was a Downward Spiral tour in 94, 95. And this thing got launched into the truss within minutes. So. And this guitar actually got the headstock ripped off it. And within the first probably couple weeks of working on it, maybe even the first week.
The level of debauchery that was happening backstage during this touring also became a thing of legend. This is when you would start to hear about things like trash dressing rooms and heavy drug and alcohol use. In the Closure video, one of the most memorable moments is when you see footage of the band backstage completely trashing a dressing room. Though mostly members of the Jim Rose circus, really. Everyone is trying to throw things at an exit sign that is already dangling by a single wire from the ceiling, including furniture. What caught my attention the first time I saw this was the fact that you see Buzz Osborne of Melvins, a band that I've seen 8 times in concert, by the way. Buzz is convinced to throw a lamp at the sign himself. Mark Dutram, who was Melvins' bassist at the time, told the story of what happened in that instance and from his own point of view on his own YouTube channel.
I was handed a bottle of vodka and told, there it is, see if you can hit it. And so I tossed this full bottle of vodka at this exit sign. I'm not sure if I hit it or not. And then they were just like, pick up whatever you want. That thing's going down. And so this wasn't, nobody in the place was particularly angry. Everybody was having kind of a really good time. And it didn't seem like anybody was particularly wasted or on any kind of drugs or necessarily drunk. This was just kind of a blowing off steam type of thing. It was sort of interesting because, there was crew in there. There was the Nine Inch Nails was in there. We were in there. and nobody really seemed like they were out of control. I mean, a couple of people were certainly enthusiastic about this, and I knew that Nine Inch Nails had had somewhat of a reputation for just venting in dressing rooms and destroying things. Here it was, we were in the center of a full-blown dressing room destruction scenario. And of course the Who and Led Zeppelin were known for this kind of thing. When you're in it, you're kind of going, okay, this is sort of weird, especially at the end of a show, because you're kind of in your downward spiral mode of getting tired and wanting to just really go to bed. I picked up a few more beers myself and threw them like baseballs at this thing. Thinking about it later, and at this point, which is decades later, it seems to me that this was just kind of a way of sort of like shore leave for sailors or something. If you're in a band and you're doing a lot of intensive touring, it's kind of like you're in a submarine and you're just there, you're sealed in, you're in your own little world, you've got a schedule that you need to adhere to, and the schedule is king, and you just need to basically adhere to that, and you've got 3 different entities doing that, and they basically collide. It just collides at showtime. Everybody's bringing their own issues to whatever that situation is, trying to keep them under wraps. Strangely, it's a safe place to do it because it's a controlled environment, and Nine Inch Nails had enough money to pick up the tab. And I guess they'd done this before, so they were in no way perturbed about this going on. Nobody was going, hey, take it easy, watch out, be careful. I feel sorry for the people that had to clean it up. All things taken into consideration, this was a relatively safe way to do it, but I don't recommend anybody out there do it, unless of course you are a big rock star and your management just makes it go away and you don't even care how much it costs.
Jonathan Ratch, a photographer who was invited to document the Self-Destruct and further down the Spiral tours, which became the film Closure, talked to Metal Hammer magazine about going on the road with Nine Inch Nails and shared some interesting insights about what happened during that tour. Ratch was quoted, "The tour bus would drive into the venue and there'd be people waiting for the band. I remember as a kid reading Hammer of the Gods, which described the Led Zeppelin days, and at one point I thought, man, this makes that look like a Disney script. It's not cool on some level to destroy a dressing room, but naturally, dressing rooms started getting destroyed. You have to understand, you can only do this in your 20s. I used to think to myself, this is only in your 20s. If you're doing this in your 40s or even in your 30s, there's something wrong with you." When Ratch was asked, Trent famously started to lose his grip with addiction and his mental health around that time, didn't he? He responded, "Everyone did. I remember one show, Robin Fink was playing guitar, and a bodyguard was in front of him trying to keep kids off stage. Robin tackled the bodyguard and sent him into the crowd. And they ruined every guitar on stage. The guitar techs were like, I got no more guitars to hand you guys. Like, where else could you behave like that? It was insane." I don't think this is the exact Robin Fink clip that Ratch was talking about, but there is a moment in the Closure film where it seems that Robin is totally out of it, that he puts his arms around a fan, standing near the edge of the stage, and ends up diving into the crowd himself. And about 2 minutes later, Trent himself has to keep Robin from going into the crowd again. So there was also elaborate pranks done in between bands. A couple of notable pranks done between Marilyn Manson and Nine Inch Nails, which I did not have enough time to find more details on. I feel like that could be its own whole separate video. Famously, David Bowie would join Nine Inch Nails' touring cycle in September 1995, with Bowie joining Nine Inch Nails on stage for a few songs, including a notable performance of Hurt. The first time I saw the Closure video was sometime in the late 2000s, and when I first saw that Bowie was part of the tour, I thought to myself, where was Bowie during all this chaos? Well, Ratch also talked about this, saying that everybody didn't necessarily start becoming more sophisticated around him, but people did go about things differently around Bowie. Basically, a lot of the destruction wouldn't happen around Bowie. Ratch retold another standout moment from backstage. I remember one time I was filming and I was in the Nine Inch Nails' dressing room, and the guys from Skinny Puppy were there joking around. They took the deli tray and threw it against the wall. Then somebody threw a bottle. Then the rowdiness sort of broke out in the dressing room. Then I went across the hallway right into David Bowie's dressing room. They were all in there reading poetry and literature. Bowie was like, "I've been there, guys. I was doing that back in the 60s. He was such a gentleman. He was just so inspiring." One thing that I couldn't help but think when seeing the way Trent acted during a live show is that a lot of it was performance art. From the way he crawled to the front of the stage at the beginning of many shows, to making obvious gestures indicating that he was in pain both physically and mentally, and some of the remarks he would make while performing.
I hope some of you get it. Please. Please. This is my favorite song I ever wrote. And I don't think anybody gets it. You don't get it, do you? You left me here and I'm all alone. And my little piggy needs something new.
When you consider that Trent was undoubtedly familiar with performance arts, as he hired Bob Flanagan for the Happiness and Slavery music video that was ultimately banned from being aired, to having the Jim Rose Circus act being part of the Self-Destruct tours, there's no doubt that Trent knew of the impact that realism can have on an audience. Trent essentially wanted to put on a hyper-realistic show, with the downward spirals theme of somebody self-destructing and losing their grip with reality and their ability to relate to others was being put on display. This strive for realism began even before the downward spiral, and Trent considered a violent, chaotic show with real, strong emotions to be a great one. Trent interviewed with a British magazine called Lime Lizard in '91, where he talked about just how far he went with the violence and emotions on stage. We did a show in Rotterdam the other week, and it was the most real and painful show I'd ever done. I don't know if the people felt the same, but I knew I could never do a better show. I was crying. It was real. I was having some kind of breakdown on stage. Then I wondered just what I was leading up to. The ultimate sacrifice? I shoot myself in the head on stage? The crew were scared. I punched the road manager in the face 4 times. The crowd was happening and I just snapped. That was real. I don't know how I'll reach those levels next time. Trent's negative feelings towards fanaticism and the realities of the music industry was definitely not kept a secret. The depression, frustration, and paranoia that came as a result of this fueled a lot of the intense emotions within the music and of the live shows. Though possibly masochistic and concerning of how that could influence an audience, I think the lengths that Trent went through towards realistically portraying himself as a tortured soul is artistically admirable. It undoubtedly etched a mark in the memories of those that attended a show. And I've also heard criticisms made at Trent that a lot of this behavior was really diva-like. I feel like this is a valid sentiment, especially from an outsider's perspective. I mean, it does seem like Trent would be a scary person to be around when he gets angry.
But it just came at a point in time where I just wanted to take that leap of faith and give it a shot.
Yeah, what made you want to step out?
The real reason? No.
He was tired of getting yelled at by his trained reason.
Oh, that's not true.
But most people have never performed in front of a large audience and don't know the feeling of frustration when you're super passionate about putting on an impactful show, but then something goes wrong. Some might also see this as Trent being a rageaholic, which I think is a valid statement, seeing as Trent has admitted to having a bottomless pit of rage that he channeled in writing his music and performing emotional shows. This was something that obviously was not going to be sustainable for too long. Drugs and alcohol ended up becoming the primary ways that Trent dealt with his inner demons. It eventually culminated into a drug-induced coma in 2000, which resulted in a cancelled show in London. This led to Trent going into recovery and seeking new ways to cope with reality. Trent would later comment in an online publication in 2013 saying, "I'm happy that I don't feel that way anymore. I've learned to recognize, and a lot of it forced through the process of recovery, that I'm wired wrong in certain ways. The chemical balance of my brain is off in terms of depression a little bit. The despair and loneliness and rage and isolation and the not fitting in aspect, that still is in me. But I can express that in a way that feels more appropriate to who I am now. And often that rage is quieter." Gradually over the years, the violence on stage has decreased, as Trent Reznor matured and his grip with drug use and his mental health have gotten better. And it seems to have notably died down since the Lights in the Sky tour of 2008. At least that's what I remember reading on Reddit. Though it still looks like he occasionally does it, especially when an instrument malfunctions. Though I had hoped to finish this video and upload it by the time 9 Inch Nails finished touring this year, I had to be real with myself and accept the fact that that was not going to happen. I just don't know when to stop adding to a project, and I'm always trying to improve the quality. I did get to see 9 Inch Nails myself on March 10th in Anaheim, California, and I did think the show was pretty awesome. And Trent did throw his guitar at one point. I thought that was pretty sweet. And I do want to point out that Trent did clarify during their last show of the tour in Sacramento on March 16th that 9 Inch Nails don't have any intentions of quitting touring and may do it again in the future if they feel inspired to. I find the contrast between 9 Inch Nails shows of the past to the shows happening in the present day so striking and captivating because of the type of comment that I usually see whenever there is a clip posted online of chaotic 9 Inch Nails shows of the past, which is something along the lines of, "Gee, I really thought Trent was not going to make it out of the 90s," or "It's surprising that Trent is where he is at now because of where he was then." So even though the high energy and emotional rawness that created the atmosphere of those shows is not the same anymore, I sure do rather prefer that we continue to get these well put together 9 Inch Nails shows today than not get anything at all. And I should also mention that the cultural change amongst the audience has also contributed to the change in atmosphere at all modern day rock shows. And in almost some kind of poetic irony, when you contrast 9 Inch Nails shows of the past to the ones of today, it seems that Trent Reznor didn't spiral downwards, but upwards. And maybe we can see this as an example that sometimes it's better to be true to your inner emotions and fully let the steam out, regardless of how weird or out there it might seem, than to always hold it in.
Nothing can stop me now.
Not my business, but if I could, I would say to those kids, talk to your clergyman. Something's troubling them.
Well, I'm glad you're concerned.
Though it's good to see that Trent has matured and has now given us what many consider to be the best concert tour of 2025, and I'm happy that we get more of it in 2026, I'm sure glad that we have so much documentation of the craziness that was 9 Inch Nails in the 90s. So that's it for today's video. And I'm really curious for anybody who actually went to a 9 Inch Nails show in the 90s and is watching this video. Was all the chaos that happened during the shows take away from the concert experience? Or did it make it better? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, I want to let you guys know that I am working on a video covering A Perfect Circle's 13th Step album, similar to the one that I did for Mur de Gnome. It's probably going to be a long one, and I'm not too sure how long it's going to take to complete, since I still need to have a day job in order to cover the bills. I do want to give a very big thank you to anyone who showed support on my last upload. That video got me past the 1,000 subscriber threshold, so I am very grateful to all of you who have decided to join me in this channel's early stages. And for anybody that is new, please consider subscribing, give this video a like, and or leave a comment. So once again, thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you guys next time.